Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Sydney Edwards, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, everything happening in the cold chain world. We're back from a much needed holiday break, and so we're going to jump right back into what we have going on in cold chain. Let's get into some headlines. Now, Mancini Packing Company is keeping their business in the family. What began as a love for sweet roasted red bell peppers turned into a packing company, selling the Italian delicacy throughout the United States as early as 1922. Now, 100 years later, the company is being bought by Alan and Debbie Mancini. Food Processing reports that Alan Mancini is a third-generation family member who now holds the title of president and CEO of the company. He worked for the pepper packing business from 1996 to 2008. Based in Zolfo Spring, Florida, Mancini Packing will now be known as Mancini Foods, LLC. A management team has been established. And 7 managers at a Tyson Foods pork processing plant in Iowa were fired in 2020 after taking part in a betting pool to see how many employees at the plant would test positive for COVID-19. Food Dive reports that 6 out of 7 of those managers are now suing the frozen food giant. The ex-employees are asking for $300,000, saying the production plant met targets that ensured incentive pay. The COVID-19 betting pool started after a wrongful death lawsuit was filed against the company when a worker died of COVID-19. Food Dive says one of the managers in the new lawsuit claims the betting pool was part of a team-building exercise because managers were tired from working so much. And ShopRite, the largest grocery business in Africa, is growing its refrigerated truck efforts. The food giant announced it is piloting a heavy-duty electric truck that also has glow-in-the-dark wrapping. The Scania battery electric truck can carry 16 pallets of product, features 9 batteries, and is fitted with solar panels and a fully electric cooling system. ShopRite says the truck, which can travel just over 200 miles, will be used for local deliveries. The glowing feature will allow it to be seen better at night. Andrew Havinga, the company's chief supply chain officer, says acquiring trucks like this will increase the brand's energy efficiency and help reduce its environmental impact across its network. Now let's get to the fun stuff. Today I'm joined by Alex Winston, the president of Expedite and Reefer Van Network. Alex, how are you?
Doing great, Sydney. Good to be with you today.
It's a happy Friday here in Freight Alley here at Freight Waves in the office. And I want to get into a bit about your background. Let's talk about what you have done before Expedite and what brought you to the company.
Yeah, I'm a recovering lawyer. Started out in M&A law, straight out of law school, buying and selling companies, mostly software companies, and ended up eventually being general counsel at a software collective that focused not in the transportation industry, but software for property management. And went from there to this current role that I have at Expedite and Reefer Van Network. And they are software platforms. So that's kind of how I got involved with them. But yeah, I've been spending the past year learning everything I can about freight and applying my software knowledge and my legal background to it. So it's been fun. It's a fun industry to learn. There's never a dull moment in logistics.
I have to tell you that I'm still relatively new to the industry as well when it comes to logistics and freight, and it is crazy everything that you end up learning, but also how welcoming the industry is. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I jumped in, and I think most people are pretty easy to tell me what I don't know.
It is. There has been a really warm welcome. Even it's sometimes like your competitors are your friends too, right? So everybody understands the struggle sometimes, and people are excited to teach you the language of freight, which when I came here, I didn't know it. Somebody said LTL, and I said, "What's that?" Right? And so, but I've learned a ton. Still learning a ton, but it's a great industry. It's a friendly industry, and like you, I'm here in East Tennessee, and does seem to be freight alley. A lot of goods moving through here.
It really is. And understanding those hardships, I think, is what a lot of people don't understand when they look into the business. And that is also part of the reason why I think the people in the business just appreciate newcomers. So getting into more about Expedite All, I understand that it's a fairly new company.
It is. So we started Expedite All earlier this year, and we've actually been building our network of carriers for a long time before that. So even before I got involved, this group had spent years consulting with trucking companies and also doing software for trucking companies. And then they thought, well, one thing we could do is also have a freight platform for them, right? And so they've been working with their carriers for a very, very long time. The Expedite All network is over 1,000 trucking companies, over 5,000 trucks all over the U.S. And picking up loads on demand everywhere, every day.
Now, getting into a bit about the fleet of things, you and I had kind of talked before the show talking about reefer requirements, and I find this pretty interesting. When you bring all the trucks in, they have to be checked. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so Expedite All has a refrigerated division called Reefer Van Network. And we have certain standards that every truck within our network has to meet. So if a driver or a trucking company wants to be in our network, they have to meet our technical specifications. And so we have them come and get their refrigeration units tested, and we test it over a period of time. And then we also have monitoring equipment to make sure that they're staying the right temperature all the time. And I think what that allows us to do is really reduce the probability that any load is going to be damaged as a result of a failure of the temperature control unit. So, yeah, we do require every single truck to meet certain standards, and so we have a good visibility into what temperature is doing on those trucks.
I believe you'd said that there haven't been a incident since you've started the Reefer Van Network and started, implementing these requirements.
So I've not had any claims related to refrigeration problems on any of our units. So, and I think that's a result of the fact that we are testing these guys before they are allowed to be on the network, and we are constantly monitoring as well. If you go to a broker who's not keeping track of those things, you might end up with some problems. Just because I hate to say it, but not every truck driver is going to be completely honest with you about the capabilities of their truck, and they may not have new equipment either, right? They may have equipment that fails. So we like to make sure we have good equipment on every truck in our network. And I think that's a benefit to all of our customers.
So getting more into Reefer Van Network, I know we have a couple images that you sent over of these trucks and these vans that we have. Tell me more about what the fleet entails and maybe why it's so important.
So we have trucks all over the U.S. and like I said, over 5,000 trucks, including our dry. And then refrigeration is actually a little under 200 trucks in the network right now. So you'll see box trucks, straight trucks, and Sprinter vans, and you can see all three of them there in that image you've got there. So, and you can also see the refrigeration units on those particular trucks too. Different trucks for different capabilities, different loads. We like to make sure that the load that you're sending goes into a truck that's the right size for it. If you're wanting a dedicated solution, right? If you need an exclusive truck, a dedicated truck, we want to make sure that truck is the right size for your load, so that we're not wasting fuel, burning more carbon emissions, and emitting more carbon emissions than is necessary. We've got sustainability goals within our industry. Transportation, I think, is the biggest source in the U.S. of greenhouse gas emissions, and so we consider it our role in reducing that for the United States. And we think right sizing the truck is a solution for our greenhouse gas problems here in the U.S.
only a solution to greenhouse gas emissions and environmental impact, but there are so many companies, so many businesses that need a smaller load to be moved. And this is something that it's an issue that I've heard about, over my time here working in cold chain at FreightWaves. And there's just not somebody with the solution for it. And so I find it very interesting that we now have the Reefer van network working on this. And so what might you say about the demand for smaller shipments when it comes to refrigerated freight?
I think the demand has grown a lot over the last decade or two, right? And I can try to place my finger on a few things, right, that cause that. One is I think e-commerce and everything going quicker, right, has led to more warehouses in more places, so smaller loads going from place to place, right? Um, and so I think you see a lot more demand for a load that needs to go 500 miles or 750 miles in a day or less, right? We have team drivers in our network that often go 1,000 miles a day, no problem, right? And since it's dedicated, it gets there right away. So I think e-commerce, I think the expansion of more and more warehouses in more places, the demand among consumers and even B2B to have things right away has also led to that. LTL is a little slower than the dedicated small vehicles. So I think all of that has led to more and more demand for these vehicles. And frankly, more people realizing that this is a possibility has also led to the demand. Even today, I have lots of brokers and shippers tell me, I didn't know a Sprinter van would go long distance, right? I thought they just went, parcel delivery in my town, right? I didn't know you had a Sprinter van that would take a piece of equipment or a couple of pallets across the country, right? So awareness has been one thing, and I think the expansion of warehouses has been another that has led to more and more demand for this.
I hadn't exactly thought about the expansion of warehouses in the areas and everything infrastructure-wise really growing. But I believe you're correct. There have been multiple articles that I've seen, especially a few lately, talking about hyper-local deliveries. And whether it's warehouse to warehouse, warehouse to distribution center, to final destination, to cold storage even, it'll be interesting to see really what that turns into now that just businesses are popping up everywhere. They're taking not only what is, more inner city companies that have spread out into the countrysides and really kind of moving everything that way too. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's fascinating. We see this industry change over and over again over the years. And so, maybe the next step is more and more small vehicles. We've seen it over the past decade. I don't expect it to slow down because I think there's always a demand for more and more speed, right? The faster I can have something, the happier I am. If you ask people, when do you want your product? They want it yesterday, right? So I expect that small vehicles will be a big part of that solution.
Getting back into the sustainability of this, when we had first spoken, you had talked about feeling a responsibility as a transportation company to mitigate the environmental impact on this. I don't know if there are numbers on what we might be saving, or when you talk about right fitting, we talk about right fitting for packages, as we had mentioned earlier. And, I don't think really people think about the resources that go into that and what could be saved in just making sure you are only moving what you need to move in a truck that you can use.
Yeah. And I think maybe some shippers can relate to this, right? Like, you have a dedicated load and it's pretty small and a semi truck picks it up. And you don't think about it, the load's getting to where it needs to go when it needs to be there, right? And it's dedicated like you wanted it to be, hopefully, right? But what you should consider is your transportation is probably most of the greenhouse gases related to your industry, to your particular company, if you're a manufacturer, are probably from your transportation. I think I saw a number 87% of food and beverage greenhouse gas emissions are not from their own processes, it's from their vendors. And most of that is the transportation companies that are moving their freight, right? So, um, it could be that over half of your greenhouse gas emissions as a manufacturer are coming from who's transporting your freight, right? So when you see that load going into a truck that's too big for it, you should think, wow, my scope 3 emissions, my greenhouse gas emissions coming from my vendors is higher than it needs to be. And if I can right size my truck every time, I can show that I've reduced my GHG emissions out there in the world, right? And so a lot more companies are reporting on this stuff every year, right? What have we done this year to make sure our vendors are using less greenhouse gases than the vendors we used last year? Or if they're the same vendors, how has our vendor reduced their greenhouse gas emissions? And transportation is the biggest culprit. It really is. There's more greenhouse gases coming from transportation sector than there are from the energy sector in the U.S. So, the more you can do to reduce those emissions, the better off you'll be. And we believe that right sizing the truck is a big factor in that. Companies have been right sizing their packaging for years, right? Ship goods, not air. Well, so get your box the right size, smaller boxes. The biggest box in your transportation supply chain is probably a truck, right? So let's make sure that one's the right size too.
I also think about price savings and product savings, because I know when some companies can't find, they have a smaller load that they need to move and they can't find necessarily a reefer van to move it, they'll package it up and they'll just put it on a dry van and hope that it gets there in one piece, temperature controlled and all. But we know that that's not always how that works. And so is there anything you would say on the fact that this could be saving product, and is there a price savings to this?
So I'll never say that a dry solution is going to be cheaper, I think a dry solution is always going to be cheaper than a reefer solution, right? The refrigeration unit obviously costs money, right? So, but right sizing your truck can certainly save you money. If you're putting a load on a semi that could fit on a box truck, any broker will tell you the box truck's going to be cheaper, right? And unless it just happens to be really far away from where you need to be picked up from. Nice thing about our company, we have trucks all over the country all the time. Any medium sized to major metro, we're going to have 50 plus trucks available anytime. You can go to expediteall.com and see where those trucks are located right around you, right? So if you went there right now and put in your zip code there in Chattanooga, you would probably see a lot of trucks available on expediteall.com, right? So, if you wanted one of our trucks to pick up your load, those carriers are going to compete for your load and bring price down, right? So, I think using a smaller vehicle is typically going to be cheaper than using a larger vehicle, mainly because of fuel costs, honestly.
Now, working with Reefer Van Network and Expedite All for the last 6 months to a year, what have you heard from clients? Any feedback that you've gotten on, the shipment of this?
They're super excited about refrigerated small vehicles, right? And really, I wouldn't even say clients, other brokers, right, come to us and they say, "Oh, do you have any of these unicorns, right? These mythical refrigerated sprinter vans, right?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, actually, we do. We have a lot of them." And so, really, we have not just shippers, but a lot of brokers asking us about this capacity as well. So, I think the demand is certainly there, right? There's a ton of need for right sizing your refrigerated shipment, right? Getting a vehicle that's cheaper and more efficient and more environmentally friendly than a semi truck to carry your refrigerated freight from origin to destination. So yeah, people are super excited about all of these small refrigerated trucks, and we've been excited about it for a while, and we're excited to see other people really excited for that market as well.
And so the future of moving freight, reefer freight specifically, where do you see that heading? Do you think everybody is going to jump on board and get a couple Sprinter brands into their fleet? What do you think?
I mean, I would recommend it, right? If you're a carrier, and you don't have, and you're doing a lot of frozen, refrigerated, anything temperature controlled. If all you have is semis, you're missing out on some dedicated potential freight that's smaller, right? Um, yeah, I think things are going that direction, but different solutions for different loads, right? So really, this is just the expansion of one of those solutions that was is still a small part of the market and a growing part of the market, right? But there's always a place for LTL, FTL, everything, right? But we do see this space growing, and we are happy to be a part of it.
And I'm curious in general where you might see the market heading, if there's any hot takes you might even have on it.
Hopefully up, right? So we've seen freight struggle in recent months, honestly. And it happens, there's good times and bad times and cycles in the US economy. And I think freight is often a leading indicator of where the economy is going, right? So if we've seen freight rates go into sort of a little bit of a recession, probably a good sign that you're going to see the economy do the same, right? But one thing we've noticed about the U.S. economy over many decades is as quickly as it goes down, it bounces right back up, and usually is better than ever when it starts to hit a high again. So we're hoping this lull that we've seen is going to be very temporary, and that we're going to see new highs again within the next year. So I'm confident about the U.S. economy. I'm confident about the American worker and the American consumer, and where we're headed. So, as far as cold chain, I don't know where it's heading. I think, and I think this may be just a small vehicle thing, but we see less of an effect when we see freight rates going down in full truckload. Typically, in the smaller trucks, we're not seeing the same thing. We're still seeing pretty strong demand. So, our loads have not been going down, thankfully, but it has the potential to upset the entire market anytime you see the economy turning down like it has recently. So we're keeping an eye on it, but we think it's going to be strong.
Alex, thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything new that Reefer Van Network or Expedite All is working on coming up?
Just additional advances in our technology. We'll probably have an announcement sometime soon to let some people know about all the things that we've been working on. But just trying to improve our tech right now is what we're working on, and making sure that we know exactly where our trucks are and what they're doing, and what their status is and temperature is all the time, right? So, that's all.
Are any of those updates cold chain related, and should I book you on the show for the future?
I'm sure we will have some cold chain related updates soon. And so I will certainly make you aware of anything that we have going on with our refrigerated division. They're always working really hard on the tech side and on our compliance side to make sure that we never have a claim, right? And so, and I told you a few of the things we're doing. We're always looking to improve that as well, to make sure our vehicles are the industry standard, right? So, happy to join you again. Had a very good time, and appreciate you allowing us to come on and join Freight Waves Running on Ice for a few minutes.
Absolutely. And so while I still have you on, tell us where folks can hear more from you, maybe where they can follow you and Expedite All on the Reefer Van Network.
Yeah, so our website is reefervannetwork.com for reefer vans. Our expediteall.com is the Expedite All website. and you can get on there and see on Expedite All, you can actually see what our rates are without even putting in any personal information. I think a lot of our competitors like to go online and do that, but yeah, it's they can find us on our websites. They can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, just expediteall.com, reefervannetwork.com, and then those particular company names at the various social media sites as well.
Alex Winston with Expedite and Reefer Van Network, thank you once again for joining my show.
Thanks, Sydney.
Now, I'll have this episode of Running on Ice, the show, in my newsletter. You can find that at freightwaves.com. Next week, I am talking with KLLM Transportation. Stay tuned.